Hey, we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to get started pretty quickly here on some of the things that's been happening kind of in and around the legal field. Some civil, some criminal, but there is a lot happening um, in the last few days and today in particular. What I want to first start out with, though, is the just miraculous and awesome recovery of Charlotte Cena. I mean, if you are not familiar with that, she was kidnapped over the weekend from a park where she was out riding her bicycle. She was out with family camping, and she and some friends were riding their bicycles. The friends went back to their campsites. Charlotte wanted to spend a little more time on the bike, so she did not return when her friends did, and then she never returned. And so that started um, a frantic search for her. And thankfully, she was recently recovered safe. And thankfully, she was safe. There's no word. I mean, they said that she was recovering at the hospital, but she was fine physically. So that is just a miraculous recovery. With my prior work with missing kids, if my recollection is correct, the average child who is kidnapped by a stranger is murdered within the first 3 hours. So the fact, and I could be mistaken on that, but that's my recollection. The fact that she was recovered safely a couple days later is just amazing. And so kudos to the law enforcement officers, the searchers. I saw the searchers out there looking for her. I've been one of those searchers before looking for a missing person, and it's a very surreal experience when you are searching. And when you see it, it's one thing. When you're part of that search, it's a whole other ball game because it makes it very real. And the work you're doing is very real. So kudos to all those search teams who are out there doing that grid search. I saw you doing that, line up to your grid search. That was awesome. And kudos to law enforcement for tracking down that suspect. And I mean, it was kind of a combination of the suspect being a little on the dumb side by leaving a note that was covered in his DNA, but thank you for doing that. And for the law enforcement, just, I mean, kind of lucky that they were able to get that note, run the fingerprints, and there were fingerprints, and that there was a match for a DUI for this man years ago. So, but kudos, great investigative work to track him down, get that job done, and to recover Charlotte safely. So her parents have a long road. Charlotte still has a long road of recovery. I mean, it's a very traumatic experience. I can't even imagine. And we don't know the details of what happened. We won't speculate until there are some charges as to what all happened when he took her. But if you follow any of the news, his family is very upset with him and ready for him to just drop dead. Basically, that's what one of his sons said. So, um, again, I just can't stress enough how amazing it is that Charlotte was recovered safely. So great job, law enforcement. And as a person of faith, um, I'm so happy that people are praying for her safe return and that God did allow that to happen. I've worked with so many families that was not the case. Some, the recovery of the body was their closure. Others, so many others have no idea. Even to this day, years and years later, they have no idea where their family member is. So, thankfully, the Charlotte's parents can tuck her into bed tonight. But there are so many other families who can't. So keep those families, if you're a praying person, keep those families in your prayers um, as you celebrate the recovery of Charlotte. So again, good job, guys and ladies and gentlemen. Good job on that. I want to move into something that kind of popped up, and I had someone ask me to talk about, and that is the Delphi murders. And before I jump into the Delphi murders, I just, to answer the question of who I am and why I'm talking about these things, I'm Tanya Hendricks. I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama, and I currently do estate planning work. So why is an estate planning lawyer talking about criminal cases? Well, I used to be a prosecutor. So I started my career out as a prosecutor and then turned to doing criminal defense work. And I decided to reduce my stress level and do estate planning work. So that's what I do now. But my start in the legal profession was as a prosecutor and then switched over to defense. And so I'm reviewing these cases because they're just quite interesting. And I have a different take on them because of my experience in the courtroom. I've had over 75 jury trials. So I've had that experience of being in the courtroom and knowing how things kind of work. Even though these cases that I'm reviewing, I don't have personal knowledge of, I just know what's out there in the public. I can still give my take on it from my background as a prosecutor, former prosecutor and defense attorney. So I'm starting out with the Delphi cases, and these are the cases where back in 2017, two young girls were murdered. They were out walking across an old railroad track or railroad bed, and they disappeared. Their bodies were found, and unfortunately, they were deceased. So that was February 13th, 2017, when little Libby and Abby were abducted and murdered. Fast forward to 2022, and a man was arrested for their murder. Now, I have to stress that he is arrested. He is cloaked, as the defense attorneys say, they're cloaked in the presumption of innocence until proved innocent until proven guilty. Our Constitution in our country, um, we boast that people are innocent until proven guilty, and so that's what we have to keep reminding ourselves: this man is innocent until proven guilty. And there's a lot of legal maneuvering. I said this before, and I'll say it again. We are a system, we are a justice system, a legal system, not a justice system. We're a system of laws. And so there's a legal maneuvering happening. There's different things that's going on with this case right now. The case for this man who's charged with the crimes is scheduled for January 2024, which is not that far away. And so his attorneys are filing a bunch of motions right now. If you have paid attention to this case, you'll know that just last month, his attorneys filed a motion that really gave us some insight into what they are claiming as a defense. So, in a criminal case, a little lesson here. In a criminal case, the prosecution has the burden of proving somebody guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So the state, the government has the burden. The defense attorney can really just sit back and do nothing. So the defense attorney can just sit there and go, "Yep, state, put your case on," and they just ask questions and poke holes. And that was the fun part about being a criminal defense attorney, is you just kind of sit back and you punch holes. And you don't have to do anything. The defendant doesn't have to do anything, but it does help if you do. And in a case with as high stakes as this one, where you got two dead little girls, and the stakes couldn't be much higher than this for the defendant. The defense attorneys are doing an exceptional job of going through the evidence and like just pouring through the evidence and seeing what's out there. So they have been doing that, and they have recovered and uncovered within all the evidence that they've received some references to um, the Odinist cult. And so the defense attorney filed last month something with the court that was bringing this to light. So we all got to hear about this for the first time last month when this motion was filed. And so they're saying the defense attorneys are going, our client is not guilty of this. These girls were killed in a ritualistic sacrifice by this group that's called the Odinist, which is a Nordic religion. And what they're claiming is that Nordic religion, the Odinist cult, has now been taken over by white supremacists. Sounds strange, right? Sounds really, really weird. Some fanciful theory. In fact, the prosecutor called it fanciful, and that it was just put out there for social media, for people to talk about in social media, which we're doing. But when you start diving into it and you read, like, just yesterday, today is Tuesday, October 3rd, just yesterday, the defense filed something else that gave us a little more information. And they're claiming now is that once they got the evidence this summer and started learning about this Odinist cult and the fact that the police had actually interviewed people from that cult, they had actually kind of investigated that, but then closed it out, like just walked away from it. That after the defense got a hold of that information and started questioning things, then the investigators opened up that investigation into the Odinist cult and their connection to the murders again. So we're now, this is stuff that's coming from what the defense attorneys are filing. I can't verify anything. This is what the defense attorneys are filing with the court. And so they're claiming that the investigators who were working this case have opened up the investigation again as to the connections with the Odinist cult. So it may not be as far-fetched as we think. It may not be that this is so fanciful that it's not beyond the realm of what could happen or what did happen. So this is something to pay special attention to see what happens here. The defense attorneys in their motion last month and what they filed with the court last month mentioned how the girls' bodies were found and how they were placed, they were posed, and that there were some tree branches or something on them in a certain pattern. And so, if that is all true and correct, that makes things very interesting because it does sound like it's some type of ritual or somebody, it's like a serial killer who has that special type of mark. So, this is something to kind of watch and see what they do and kind of what comes next. What the attorneys filed yesterday was in their motions like, Judge, we need you to tell the state to turn everything over by November 1st. And I think their quote was, we're getting things drip, drip, drip. And so they're saying, Judge, make them turn everything over now because we got trial in January. We've got to prepare for trial, and we can't prepare for trial if we keep getting stuff in. Now, obviously, they want the state to keep investigating these other possible people because apparently there's also someone who has confessed to it, who's got a connection to this Odinist cult. And apparently, that confession, the person who did that had some knowledge of the crime scene that had not been made public. And this is, again, according to the defense attorneys and what they have filed with the court. So a lot of this stuff remains to be seen if that's this true and correct. Generally, attorneys have an oath that we have to be truthful to the court. So I would not suspect that the defense attorneys would file something with the court that says something is there that's within the evidence that they have received from the state if it's not there, because it can be disproven pretty quickly, and they would be in some hot water with not only this judge, but also their state bar association. So I would tend to believe what they have written in their petitions and their motions, they have seen in the evidence that has been provided to them. But they are asking the court to tell the state, turn everything by November 1st so that we can really prepare for trial. And what they are getting at is there are some things in the discovery that they have received, or there may be some things in the discovery that is what's called exculpatory evidence. And exculpatory evidence is evidence that would tend to prove their client innocent, that would tend to prove their client was not the person that committed that offense. And so the defense attorneys are like, get this stuff turned over to us now, because they're going to need to go through it and kind of do their own investigations between now and the January trial. So this is this has taken a very interesting twist, very interesting turn, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Whether or not there is some cult who did this, one of the things that the defense attorney has to do is to try to create reasonable doubt. So the prosecution, when they go to trial, has to prove to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that this person, that one, this crime was committed, two, this person committed this crime. What the defense attorney is doing is trying to create reasonable doubt. The defense attorney is saying their job is to say there is some reasonable doubt that either this offense happened, which we all know that this offense with the Delphi murders happened. So what the defense is trying to do is create reasonable doubt that it was their client who did it. So they want the finger pointed somewhere else. And they're claiming in their in what they have already filed with the court, and I would suspect this is something they're going to say to a jury, because I certainly would have, and I certainly did at times, say that, hey, there are other people out there, but the police, when they zeroed in on my client, they shut off all other investigations because they got in their head, this is the person who did it. And so they're not going to bother investigating anybody else. And so that is actually a very effective argument. It's been successful for me in the past, and I suspect it will kind of go a long way here. The problem is the prosecution says that this man has actually confessed in those jailhouse phone calls. So after he was arrested, talking to his wife and I think a daughter, according to the prosecution, he confessed multiple times to the murders. Now, and if you don't know, jails have phones that the inmates can call family and friends. Those phone calls are recorded, and they always know that. So why would somebody say anything? But in case you don't know, those phone calls are recorded. So don't say anything that's going to implicate you in a crime, because those are going to be recorded and used against you in court. You know, we have this thing in the Constitution that says we have it. Well, it's not in the Constitution. It is a case, and it's our rights, our Miranda rights. So we have the right to remain silent, and anything we say can be used against us in a court of law. So exercise that right to remain silent. Okay, don't talk on the jailhouse phone, because it's going to get recorded. So that is kind of the update for the Delphi murders. We will see what happens over the next couple of months with that. What happens if they continue the investigation? They have indeed opened that investigation. But oh yeah, I want to get back to the jury part. So yes, the defense is just can insert doubt, reasonable doubt. If they can get a juror, or a couple of jurors to go, you know what, they're right about this ritualistic murder. This man wasn't the person who did it. It was this group. It was this Odinist group. So if he can get one or two people to hold out, then it could cause them to have a mistrial of this particular trial. And then they may have to try it again, or they do further investigation. But it also helps the defense to go and say, look, these people zeroed in on my client. There's these other things out there. Why didn't the police follow through with those leads? Why didn't the police go and investigate those things? And that can certainly create doubt. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, I want to move on because there are a couple other things that's happening. And one of them is Trump is on trial. So there are actually two trials happening in a Manhattan courthouse, and they're pretty much side by side. So Trump is having his civil trial, and then the Bankman-Fried, who is the founder of the FTX cryptocurrency thing, his fraud trial is happening, and they're kind of next door to one another. So that has to be a circus atmosphere with those two trials happening at the same time. I mean, there's got to be cameras and things going everywhere. So I'm glad I'm not in that area. All right. So what's happening with Trump is on civil trial for fraud. The state has claimed that he inflated his numbers to get bank loans, and so there are some issues there. The judge has made some rulings already, said that the numbers are indeed inflated, and now they're just trying to figure out some things. So the only thing I'm really going to touch on is that the judge just issued a gag order against Trump. Now, if we know Trump, he can't keep his mouth shut. So we'll see how this gag order goes. But the judge has said that he cannot post or talk about his trial. He is banned from talking about the suit, which also includes posting on social media. So if he violates that could be 30 days in jail and $1,000 fine. So, I mean, he can pay the $1,000 fine every day of the week, but the 30 days in jail would be tough. So we'll see if he is able to keep his mouth shut. He has a history of not. So we'll see. But what got the judge so angry was that Trump decided to attack his clerk. Now, having been in the court system multiple times and in different jurisdictions, the fastest way to really tick off a judge is to talk badly about and treat their staff badly. If you do not, I mean, if you really want to tick off a judge, you talk badly about their staff or treat them poorly. And that's going to draw the ire of a judge. So Trump posted that the judge's clerk is the girlfriend of Chuck Schumer. Now, Chuck Schumer is married, but he called her the girlfriend. I think it looked kind of tongue in cheek. I don't know. You know how Trump is, how he says things off the cuff. I think it was kind of tongue in cheek, but he made a comment about the judge's clerk. And just don't leave him alone. Stay on the good side as best as you can of the judge by not talking badly about his staff. And Trump also said that the clerk is the one running this case against him. So I think the clerk is running for some type of office, and so Trump is attacking her. Just don't. I mean, it just makes life in your case more difficult. So that is what's happening. He has been very animated in the courtroom, giving thumbs up. He's been had a scowl on his face. I mean, that's just who he is. Um, and he needs to cut it out. You know, I've had clients who sometimes they would speak up and do things. And I just wanted to do this. I wanted to sink underneath the table because you tell your clients, don't do this, don't do that. Show respect to the judge, show respect to the court reporter, show respect to the clerks, and show respect to us as much as you don't want to. When you go in a courtroom, there are certain things that you need to do because when a judge or jury is making a decision, they're taking all kind of things into account. They're trying to decide, can they trust you? Are you someone that they can trust? So when you talk, can they believe what you say? And they don't just take in what you say when you're on the stand. They watch your body language. They watch how you interact with your lawyers. They watch how you interact with the judge. They respect the judge. They respect the clerk. They respect the court reporter. So how do you treat them? Do you treat them with respect? These are things the jurors take all this stuff in because they have to decide whether or not to believe you. They have to decide who they can trust in this whole case because there's a bunch of strangers involved. But they know the judge is not partial, the clerk is not partial, and the court reporter not partial, or at least not supposed to be. And so they're relying on those people to kind of be the neutrals, and then they're watching how everybody else interacts with them. And they're watching the body language of, particularly if you're the defendant, you're being watched like a hawk, even when you don't think so. So you have to be on your best behavior when you're in a courtroom and when you're around a courthouse because jurors, if it's a jury case, the jurors are riding the same elevators as you. The jurors are parking the same parking garage as you or parking lot. So you have to be on your best behavior. Trump is not being on his best behavior. He doesn't know he can't. He just can't help himself. But he's got to figure it out here if he's going to get any credibility with anybody in that courtroom. And so, as far as the ban, good luck with the gag. I don't know that he's going to be able to stay quiet. But there is a gag order. The judge did issue the gag order, and if he violates it, it could be 30 days in jail and or a $1,000 fine. We'll see. We'll see how long he can keep his mouth shut. His poor attorneys, I've watched, I don't know if you've seen his attorneys' faces at times. They got their hands full. I've been there. I haven't had somebody quite that bad, but I've had clients who wanted to talk and wanted to do things, and it was not in their best interest. And they did everything I told them not to do. So I feel for them as they are trying to control their client and keep their client out of further trouble. Finally, just to touch on the FTX case with Bankman-Fried. This is a white-collar crime case where he is alleged to commit fraud regarding cryptocurrency. So many people don't understand cryptocurrency, including me. But this one is going to be interesting to watch. And just because we can learn about cryptocurrency and figure out how this happened, there were a lot of celebrities who invested in this and lost millions of dollars. I mean, millions. I think there's a B in there for one or two people too, but I know millions of dollars many celebrities lost because they trusted this person and thought that he had all of his stuff together. The prosecution, though, has lined up some of his former friends, people that worked for him at FTX, to testify against him. Even his own former girlfriend is apparently going to testify against him. We'll see. There are people, these people cut a deal because they've also been arrested. They've also been charged with some of these fraudulent crimes. We will see what they get in return for their testimony. When people cut deals like this, they get some type of leniency from their willingness to cooperate with the authorities. And so, of course, that will be used against them as they testify because Bankman Fried's attorneys will question them about that. Like, what are you getting in return? They have motivation to testify, and the assumption is they will testify truthfully. But of course, Bankman Fried's attorneys go, "Oh, no, you can't trust what they say because they're getting a sweetheart deal in return." So they'll probably all still go to prison. It's just the length of time that they will go. It could be reduced because they cooperated with the police. All right, that is it for the day. And there's, like I said, there's a lot, a lot to watch and keep up with. But if you enjoyed this content, just like and subscribe my channel. Again, I'm Tanya Hendricks. I'm an attorney, and I hope you enjoyed this. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great day.